Most of the web and mobile applications we are using internally make use of REST APIs to communicate with the server. REST APIs are the most widely used form of APIs, and in this video we are going to see what is a REST API and why is it so popular. In case you don't know much about APIs, I will invite you to check our previous video titled "What is an API?" That being said, let's move forward. REST simply stands for Representational State Transfer. It's not a protocol, it's not a specification, it's just a set of rules commonly agreed to communicate between client and server. A REST API is being made up of the following standards. The first one is Uniform Interface. Uniform Interface simply means that communication between the client and the server is being done following a standard data format. That is, data transfer between the client and server uses a standard format, and in most cases is the JSON format. Statelessness. This simply means that requests sent between client and server, no information about this client or server is being saved. That is, the client does not save information about the server, and the server doesn't save information about the client. That's what we call statelessness. Cacheable. REST gives us the possibility to cache data either on the client side or on the server side in order to improve the response time. Client server. Of course, if we talk about REST API, we're talking about the client server architecture because there must be a client and there must be a server. The one requesting for information, the one sending the request is the client, and the component responding to this request is called the server. A layered system, that is in a REST API, we can have many components, and a request can, for example, leave the client and is routed through many servers in order for it to reach a targeted server, right? So a request can be routed through server A, server B, and server C in order to reach the target resource on server D. And the response sent by this server will also be routed through these other servers in order to reach the client. That's what we mean by layered system, a system made up of many layers. Code on demand simply means that the server can send a code which is interpreted on the client. For example, in case of a login request, the server can send a response. For example, let's say a server sends a response which says that, for example, phone number invalid or password incorrect, and this code will be interpreted on the client and displayed to the user. That's what we mean by code on demand, and this is usually optional. An API that follows the REST standard is said to be RESTful. An example of such APIs are the MTN Mobile Money API, the OpenStreetMap API, and Flutterwave. These are very popular APIs used in thousands of applications outside there. So, what are the different components of a REST API? I will start by saying that for a REST API, requests are being sent over HTTP and resources are being organized using URIs. URI simply stand for Universal Resource Identifier. Let's take an example where a company exposes its information, and we have a URI in order to access the employees' information, and we have another URI that gives us access to departments. So you can see that resources have been organized using URIs. In order to perform an operation on a resource, we need to specify a request method. Request method can either be for post, that's used to create a new resource item, get, that's used to read from a resource, put, used to update a specific resource, and delete, used to delete, which is not usually recommended. We are not usually invited to delete information on the server. A request may contain a request body. This is optional. Request body is obviously used in post and put requests, because these are request method that usually where we usually send much information to the server. So request body can be used, definitely used in post and put request. So if we combine that information, we can have this example. This show us that a post request, for example, is sent to the employee resource, and in here we are trying to create a new employee. That is, we're trying to save a new employee in our database, for example. And the server will respond, telling us if our request was successful or not. And the server response usually contain a status code. For example, in this case, we have a status code of 200. The status code indicates to us the state of our request, if it was successful or not. The 200 level status code is usually used to indicate successful response. Successful response, that is our request went through successfully. The 300 level code usually used to indicate that we have like a redirection issue. The 400 level code is usually used to indicate an error at the level of the client, for example, unauthorized, forbidden, or request not found. The 500 level error, the 500 level is usually used to indicate an error at the level of the server, for example, service unavailable, gateway timeout, or bad gateway, for example. And the response may also contain a response body to give to the client more information about his request. For example, if you are trying to read information about employees, the response will contain the list of employees. And in this case, in our case, for example, we'll try to create a new user, and the response came up with the user information. And most of the time, the response body is usually in a JSON format. REST API also gives us the possibility to determine who can have access to our API, and this is usually done using either the API key or the authorization token. The API key is usually passed as a query param or in the request header, whereas the authorization token is always passed in the request header. The authorization token can either be a basic or a beta token. I'm sure we're going to see more about that in our subsequent video. Another important point about REST API is that it gives us the possibility to be able to version our API. The versioning helps us to maintain backward compatibility of our API in case we release a new feature that is not compatible with the existing version of the API. That is, in case the update is not compatible with the previous version. So this API gives us a possibility to save our new update and to give time to our clients or to our users to be able to test and migrate to the new API version. Example, you can see it here where we have an API with two versions, the version 1 and version 2, to access the employee information. So that is it about REST APIs, which I wanted to share with you. Please feel free to drop your questions in the comment section below, and we'll be happy to answer to all your questions. Don't forget to subscribe and share in case you like what we do, and stay tuned for the next video. The next video, I would like us to see what are the different errors we can have when using the REST APIs. The first one is the request timeout error. I would like us to discuss about request timeout in our next video. So don't forget to subscribe and share in order to be notified when we release this next video. That being said, see you in the next video. Thank you.